Well, good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the TravelMole COVID-19 interviews. Today, I'm delighted to have two gentlemen from South Africa who represent the commercial side of life in the tourism industry. We have Chief from the business sector, and he is from the tourism business community of South Africa. And we have Robert Moore from the Moore Group. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Good morning, Robert.
Morning, Graham.
Now, Chief, perhaps you can explain a little bit about what your organisation does, how it represents its members, and how you go about your business.
Thank you very much. The Tourism Business Council of South Africa is a private sector organisation that works with the tourism value chain from the private sector to lobby government to ensure that we have a favourable trading conditions. We have policies that are good for ease of travel, and we also have conditions on the ground that ensures that when visitors are here in South Africa, they are able to go around, they're able to do what they're supposed to do, enjoy their time, and go back home safely. So our job is to lobby and represent the private sector in South Africa, in the circles of government, and other places, business sectors like mining and whatnot, banking. So we represent the tourism sector within the larger community of business sector in South Africa. So we are here for private interest and to ensure that we trade favorably and tourists come to South Africa.
Excellent. Now, Robert, you have been in the tourism business some time, I believe. Perhaps you can just give me a little bit of your background and what you do to earn a crust.
Graham, 20 years old. We own a collection of boutique luxury lodges and hotels stretching from Cape Town all the way up to Victoria Falls. We employ about 800 people within the group, and about 90% of our customers are international visitors from throughout the world. So that in a nutshell is our business, yeah.
Okay. Now, Chief, I understand that from what I've read and discussions I've had with various people that you currently have, you're trying to pressurise the South African government to a little bit more action in terms of the tourism industry. It's a refrain that we hear all around the world. Virtually every country in the world's tourism sector, and particularly the commercial sector, is pressurising their government to relax some restrictions to do with coronavirus. What's the situation in South Africa, and what's the state of play between you and the government?
We have made a significant inroads in terms of lobbying government to allow us to open. And what we have done as the South African private sector, tourism businesses, we put together protocols, to de-risk the sector in terms of, COVID-19. And we submitted those protocols in terms of how we're going to operate from hotels to bed and breakfast, guest houses, safari vehicles, car rentals, and so forth and so on. So it's very inclusive. It's very comprehensive. So we submitted that to government to say, this is what we're going to do as a private sector to mitigate the spread of the virus. And we believe that has been accepted from when we talk to government. So that's significant, for us. Number two, the government has allowed, domestic business travel to happen, although at a limited times. But we believe that what we have done now is to say to government, you need to open domestic leisure market, which we believe that's going to be considered this week. And you need to open up, inter-provincial travel so that people can move from one province to another. They can also, fly, and also they can be able to drive themselves. The third thing is to say you need to open international travel by September at the latest. And when I say the latest, it means that if we can do this early and we start to trade with other countries that have similar risk profile with us at a phased approach and a safe approach, we should be able to start receiving international tourists sooner than September. So that is what we've put at the door of government, and we believe that government will listen to us, and we believe that we will be able to open at least by September, if not earlier than that. So we have put an amount of pressure to government, and we hope that very soon we're going to hear the way forward.
Isn't, though, Chief, the real issue, and it's throughout the world, is the balance between commerce and the balance between health and safety. And at the moment, in terms of commerce, you know, every day there's a debate in the media that governments are relaxing lockdown too quickly, or they're leaving it on too long. You know, that's the real dilemma. Is that the case in South Africa, that, you know, there's a balance basically between the health of people and getting your industry up and running again?
Absolutely. And that's what we've taken into consideration when we develop protocols, to say protocols are there to ensure that the livelihoods of tourism sector employees and business owners is protected. But also, we are doing that to make sure that we mitigate the spread of the virus, because we cannot afford to go and have business as usual given the circumstances that we're in. And that is why, you know, it's a delicate balance, like you said, to say, you know, how do we make sure that we don't spread the virus, and how do we make sure that people don't stay at home and get depressed and lose their livelihoods, lose their houses, their kids are not able to go to school. So that's why we say we've got to marry the two and make sure that whatever we do takes into consideration both aspects, the lives and the livelihoods. And we believe that we have done so, and we've proved to government that we can do so by operating some of our facilities as quarantine and helping out in the process of mitigating the spread of the virus. So we believe that the two have to be balanced, and we believe that we have done so, and we believe that we should be considered favorably, you know, by government.
Rob, what's the practical issues here as far as a product owner is concerned? I mean, you say you employ 800 people. That's a lot of people to employ if you've got nobody coming to your boutique hotels.
Graham, I mean, it's, you know, it's moved so quickly. You know, if I think back 12 weeks, we were forecasting to have a pretty strong year, and then the initial 3-week lockdown took place, and then there was an extension to that, and then an introduction of the risk-adjusted strategy, which seems to be a global approach in terms of this phased approach driven by epidemiological assessment. And in terms of our business, you know, a lot of our costs are fixed, which makes it incredibly difficult. And probably one of the highest fixed costs are the payroll. And it's been devastating. You know, in March was a normal payroll month. April, we pulled back 10-15%. May was those that were working, and I would say about 10% of our staff stayed working, mostly looking after the assets and those answering the phones, and the rest all went on to a government subsidy, which was driven by the Unemployment Insurance Fund. And but I mean, you know, the average cut on payroll is between, it's a tiered approach, so between 70 and 80% of payroll that has been lost to 700 of our employees, if not more. About 740 employees of ours have gone from 100% earning to March to May down to about 70% of what they were earning.
And do you think the South African government will take all of that into account and actually react quite quickly to the plea for an easing of lockdown and an implementation of your strategy?
Graham, I mean, I think, you know, we can only, I think it's difficult, and the reason why I hesitate is that it's difficult to know. You know, every day is a new day. Every day there's a little bit of hope in certain industries being given the ability to reopen safely. For me, one of the most positive sort of elements from our indications from our government is that they allowed, as Chief was referring to, they allowed us to draft the operational safety protocols, and that's not often done. You know, often the government will dictate to private sector how we should operate, and they allowed us to put it together. We submitted it 10 days ago, and the way, I think we're learning. You know, the rest of the world is a couple of weeks ahead of us. I think we're certainly learning a lot from elsewhere in the world, and I am optimistic that in the coming weeks, as Chief referred to, the key milestone to getting our borders opened is to get into provincial leisure travel happening. That's what we need to do. It'll allow us to prove to government that we can operate a guest experience safely, and it'll also allow us to communicate to our international partners that we can deliver a guest experience with all the right safety protocols around it. The other opportunity that South Africa has coming up at the end of the year is, as we move out of winter and into summer, We're a destination that is incredibly well suited to a traveler who's anxious around COVID-19. We have open spaces, we have low density of tourism sites. We have incredible safari lodges where again, all outdoors. It's to get space and open areas for travelers is a very easy thing to do in our country, especially accompanied with the arrival of summer, which will be in September.
Okay, Chief, you're presumably the man that delivered the envelope to the government with your plan. Have you had any response, or have they just said, "That's very nice, thank you, we'll go away and read it"? Have they come back and said, "Oh yeah, that's good," or "No, we don't like that"? Have you had any feedback at all?
Yeah, we have constant feedback from government. I speak quite regularly with the Director General within the Department of Tourism, who's responsible for policy. I also speak, on a day-to-day basis with the CEO of South African Tourism, which is responsible for marketing the country as a tourist destination. So both this discussion, including the minister's discussion, have been very positive. They've engaged with us. They've asked us questions. They've said to us, how do we do certain aspects, and we debate these issues. And based on these debates that we constantly have, I can tell you from what I'm seeing is that, there's positivity. Things are moving to the right direction, and they're moving fast to that direction. Let's remember that we were only looked at by government to open next year for international inbound. But now we are being looked at now for September, if not earlier. So it means that the discussion, the debates that we have, although we have to balance the two in terms of the lives and livelihoods, it means that, we're moving to the right direction. We participated in putting together the recovery strategy for the sector, which we believe is sitting with the minister now. She's considering it, and soon she will announce it. And as a private sector, we believe that we are well covered, within that recovery strategy. And we should be able to get some markets, moving and also stimulate the demand. So we believe government is listening. We believe that we're going to get the positive results that we seek as a sector. We believe that we've made a point enough to say that tourism, in terms of employment and its contribution to the economy, it's far greater than many other industries that are allowed to operate. We've even gone further, as Robert said, and put together protocols, for government to say, this is how we're going to operate. So there's positive news, and I believe that we should get some dates, concrete dates in terms of when are we going to start, but we have put our foot down as a private sector to say, we believe we should start in September, and if we don't, these are the consequences of not starting, and they are listening to us.
Do you, as a general point, do you think that, because wherever I go in the world, no matter what country it is, the tourism and travel industry often think, and I think with some justification, that tourism and travel is not treated as well as other industries. So, for example, manufacturing industries or the finance industry, or in your case, potentially the mining industry, that more attention and just basically love a little bit of TLC for the travel and tourism industry wouldn't go amiss, given that its importance to within the travel industry. Do you think, is that the case in South Africa, as it is the case almost anywhere in the world?
Look, it used to be the case, I would say, until 2 years ago, when we put together a plan to say we need to significantly, as a private sector, elevate tourism. It was our plan as a Tourism Business Council. And then we put together a plan where we presented to the president, and he took, he recognized the sector and said, well, if we want to create jobs, we need to look at new sectors. Yes, in the past, we look at mining, we look at banking, we look at agriculture. Then they start to realize that the industry or the sector that has been consistently adding more jobs was the travel and tourism and hospitality sector. And that is when the president started to say, wait a minute, this is the sector to look at. Before COVID-19, on the presidential list of priorities, tourism was number 2. It means that we were being looked at differently. So it took a long time. And indeed, for many other destinations, it takes a long time to really convince government to say tourism is important. Tourism contributes to the economy. This is how the value chain works. And this is how many people are employed within the sector. And to convince governments that are used to resource-based kind of economies and sectors and some of them heavily in agriculture, is very difficult. But we successfully did that over the past 2 years, and we hope, and by the way of pushing now to say that, you know, this should not be forgotten, that tourism is still a significant sector, and that's why we're saying if you don't reopen it, this is how many jobs are going to be lost. If we open too late, we're not going to be competitive, and this is how many people are going to be out of work. And in South African context, there are way too many people out of work, and tourism is the solution and is the answer. And we believe that we've made that case to government, and we believe this would work, you know, when it comes to COVID-19.
Very good. Rob, as a product owner, do you feel that the industry its footprint in government is getting bigger? Do you feel as if you're being represented not just by chief, but actually by elected politicians more effectively nowadays than, say, you know, 20 years ago you were talking, which is not that long ago really, to 2000. You've had lots of major sporting events in South Africa since then. Major focus on South Africa as a tourism destination. Do you feel as if you are now getting your shout at the top level?
I think under the current leadership of President Ramaphosa, I think many sectors within our country are getting the right attention and are instilling the necessary disciplines to build a much stronger economy and address probably one of our biggest challenges, which is the high level of unemployment. So I'm confident under the new leadership that we are getting back on track, not only as an industry but as an overall economy of South Africa. So I remain very optimistic. As you all know, our past it's been difficult, the prior 8 years, but you know, we can't change the past. We can only change the now and the future. And I'm optimistic about our president, his leadership style, and his commercial understanding and the key thing which is to create jobs. And as Tshifhiwa was saying, tourism can operate in remote locations where often manufacturing and commercial industries can't get to, where a lot of people do live remotely in rural, impoverished communities. And through, you know, linking into the safari products that South Africa has, we can employ people in those areas. The other opportunity that tourism has is that it does not require an excessive amount of training to employ people. It's a fairly low-skilled function from, you know, all the different components that make lodges and hotels work. So I'm very optimistic about the industry as a whole, and but especially, you know, underscored by our current president, who I think is a very competent leader. Good.
Talking of positivity, you spoke earlier that South Africa is an ideal destination for travellers that might be concerned about personal safety in terms of the COVID-19. Wherever I've gone and done some research around the world as well, it would appear that fly drive, being independent, is the way to go, certainly in the early periods of recovery in COVID-19. Does that suit your product? Does that suit the South African product?
You know, I mean, it is I suppose size is all relative, but it does require, you know, South Africa is a country that is visited primarily as an itinerary. So there's often a Cape Town safari element and then an extension up into Victoria Falls. So there is definitely a fly element to a visit to South Africa, but it it doesn't mean that can't be reduced. There are many options. The positive side, I suppose, of South Africa is that the road network is exceptionally good. The airports are world class, you know, which was one of the outputs from hosting the World Cup in 2010. You know, and within those airports, the facilities are good, the spacing is good, so the movement of people, this whole being able to create a space around our travelers, around our guests is very much achievable. And then if those travelers do want to come into Cape Town and go up the Garden Route in particular, which is a very popular area to visit during our summer season, they can easily do that by renting a car. So I think, you know, we're not naive to the fact that it's going to take us a few years to get back to our sort of our norm. But I think we're going to have a softer landing than many because of those elements, those factors that I mentioned about us as a destination.
Okay, cool. Chief, last word with you. What happens What happens if the government comes back to you and say, no, I don't like it, not going to do it? What's your next move?
Well, it's not something that we will, accept very easily. We believe that, there are many other sectors that are being allowed to operate, using, pretty much similar type of protocols. And we believe that, we should be also allowed to do so. If we're not allowed to do so, there will be too many inconsistencies across various sectors. And when you have too many inconsistencies, it sort of, lends itself to, many people questioning, what is the most probable step to take. And for us as the Tourism Business Council, we'll have to reconvene, immediately and urgently. We'll have to look at our options to say, what else do we need to be doing? How else can we do it? What other resources do we need to pull in? So there are many options that are available in front of us, but we're hoping that we don't get to those options. We're hoping that, we should be able to resolve the issues around COVID-19, sitting around table and be able to come up with a solution. But for us, as a private sector organization, we are not going to take that, lightly. We have put the date down that we want to open in September or earlier than September for international inbound. And we believe that we should be able to do so. And we believe that as a sector, we've done everything that we could have done to be able to open. So it will be inconsistent with how government has been approaching these things. And again, like I said, we'll have to look at the options. But for us, we're not going to take this, we're not going to back down on the date that we put on the table. If we back down, it means that we've lost the whole year. It means that there's nothing else that comes to us. We have to wait until the next cycle, which is going to be next year, August. That's unacceptable. So that's why for us, that's the date. There's no other date other than what we've put down.
Now, that's very good, and I'm pleased to hear it. In your protocol that you've given to the government, have you gone to the extent of talking about air bridges to some of your key overseas markets like the UK?
No, absolutely. It's something that the committee that was led by Rob that looked at the inbound looked into those issues, and Rob is more suitable to answer on that because he was working very diligently with the guys. But those are the kinds of things that we've put out. But Rob can answer that more effectively.
Okay, Rob, air bridges to the UK.
Yes, Graham. So, I mean, we've initially just submitted the proposal, which was last week. It was definitely part of the proposal in terms of the reopening, the phased reopening. And we're actually regrouping tomorrow. We've got as a working group, and we're going to be reaching out to the different, with the airlines as well, reaching out to the different countries through our ambassador channels, and start to debate in terms of how do we move to implementation? How do we move, on the assumption, as Tshifhiwa was mentioning, on the assumption that government is going to see our proposal favorably, we now need to move into the actual implementation and practical side of how do we phase our reopening safely. And that's looking at similar countries with similar risk profiles and then creating those direct routes first. That's part of phase one. And then as a phase two, we're going to look through how the customers the guests would get to us hubbing out of other areas, in particular the Middle East. You've got Emirates, which is a key player, key supplier of seats into the country, but they would probably follow a direct route. So let's just say British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, coming in directly to South Africa. Those are the immediate direct routes that we would want to establish as soon as possible. And then as just one last point in terms of what Tshifhiwa was again addressing, the end of the season, about 60% of our total annual revenue is achieved over our summer season. So it's vital. It is absolutely vital that we are open for business in September or sooner. And the other thing that's really critical about our industry, which you will know very well, Graham, being in the space, is that we're selling forward. We're fairly unique in terms of many different industries where we have a very strong order book for the last quarter of South Africa. And unless we come out with a very strong, clear, straight answer in the next 4 weeks, we're going to lose that order book. Partly, one, because of the lack of certainty for guests, and the other element will be other parts of the world are reopening. And I think travelers are going to want to travel in that last quarter. So this next 2 to 4 weeks, vital that we get a very clear, straight answer from our government And at the same time, running parallel to that, we're already starting to have dialogues with countries like yourselves to create these safe bubble access points between South Africa and the United Kingdom.
Good. Well, Rob, Chief, I wish you the very, very best of luck. Perhaps we can revisit this in 3 or 4 weeks' time once the government have made their mind up, if the government of South Africa have made their mind up, and maybe the 14-day quarantine in the UK has been taken away as well. I hope the weather improves as well, because both of you gentlemen look as if you're actually geared up for a Norwegian winter rather than a South African spring or autumn. So I wish you the very, very best of luck, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.